Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for being here. I'm Dante Roschini, and together with my fellow professor Hans-Helmut Kotz, I co-chair the European Economic Policy Forum here at CES. And so today we're very fortunate to have Romano Prodi with us. And Romano, of course, needs no introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyway. One, because as an Italian, it pleases me, and I'm proud to do so. And two, because of course, it will remind us of how fortunate we are to have him at CES with us tonight. So Romano comes from a family of academics. He's a fan academic himself. In fact, he's here because he's a new fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, which we can congratulate him for. He's been a fine academic for a long time. In fact, he taught here at Harvard as well as a visiting professor. He then turned businessman, political leader, of course, and an international public servant and statesman. And his remarkable life and career has been really at the heart of Italy's and Europe's history for the last 40 years. So after serving as a professor of economics at the University of Bologna, he entered government for the first time in 1978 as the Minister for Industry. And then after two productive periods in the 80s and the early 90s, where he was the chairman of IRI, the Institute for Industrial Reconstruction, which is the largest state-owned company, of course, created after the war that had a real chunk of the economy, during which he famously started the privatization process. That's when I met him, actually, back in the early 90s. And his life really took a turn in 1996 when he decided to start this new political movement, the Olive Tree, and to run for prime minister. And so he went out and appealed directly to the people, touring the country for 5 months in a bus. And he was able to defeat the media might of Silvio Berlusconi, and he won. So in his 28 months of prime minister, using his very characteristic consensus-building approach to government, he achieved what I would say are unprecedented results, right? He privatized telecommunications, he reformed the government's employment and pension policies. Importantly, he significantly reduced the budget deficit of the country as he was preparing it to enter in the European Monetary Union, a task which frankly seemed all but impossible when he started out. And after that experience concluded, Romano went on to play a larger arena, and in the following years he was named president of the European Commission. And of course, his presidency was at the heart of momentous achievements for the Union. So his name will, I think, be prominently displayed in the history books. Among the things that he presided over were obviously the introduction of the euro and the agreement on the Stability and Growth Pact, but also the enlargement of the EU, where he negotiated another 10 countries joining the Union. And then, he did many other things, including the launch of the initial common foreign security policy, the construction of the Lisbon Agenda, and a whole variety of important initiatives in the fields of justice, home affairs, immigration, refugees, international crime and trafficking, etc. After his term as president, it ended in 2004, he returned to Italian politics, and in 2006, he decided to run again for prime minister, 10 years after the first time. And once more, he defeated Silvio Berlusconi, the only Italian politician who actually did that. Essentially, he was in office for another 20 months, and then after that, and so having led Europe and having led Italy twice, he then turned to bigger things. He was the UN Special Envoy for the Sahel. But as the intellectual that he is, he went back to his original love, academia, inspiring young people all over the world, and became a professor at large at nearby Brown University, as well as teaching students at the China-Europe Business School in Shanghai. So given his amazing life journey, Romano has a unique perspective, I think, on Italy, of course, on Europe, but also on the world. So we're very grateful to have him here. He decided to share his thoughts with us. He's going to speak for a little bit, and then we'll open it up for questions. So let's welcome him, and let's get started.
Thank you, Dante. You're giving best idea for my obituary. I've never seen such effective. But anyway, as I told to the Italian group they were before, you have to be very careful when you arrive to my age, because I invented a motto during my last birthday that when the candles start to cost more than the cake, you have to be very careful, because it's a signal of different equilibrium, But anyway, look, also because of the wisdom of the audience, I don't think that is useful to have a formal speech. I think that we launch some, let's say, message, then we talk together, because it's much more effective. It's because many things are happening, and we are here in the Center for European Studies, and so I want to start to tell you what could be the evolution of the European Union in the last events, Brexit, French and German elections, the Spanish case, and all the possibility of fragmentation, just a couple of minutes each, and then we discuss and we deepen all that, It's because, a lot of change came, After Brexit, many people thought that the European Union was close to die or finish. I think that Brexit has been a damage, but I don't think, in any case, that will be imitated, because the British case is unique. British history is different, and there is. I do remember when I was president of the European Commission that there was always a strange British attitude. First of all, when I became president, I thought to be in a let's say in a group of nation under the bureaucratic rule of France and Germany, while the British diplomacy and the British let's say bureaucracy was leading, really, for two reasons. First of all, first-class people. Second, because with any of my European, let's say, collaborators, it was immediately clear whether one was a socialist or Christian Democrat, and so on and so on. Among my British collaborators, I never understood. They were sons or daughters of Her Majesty, nothing else, and this makes an enormous. But this is to give the idea of the national speciality, and always, in any case, this group of people, they were discussing and putting under analysis any proposal, anything, it was really being part and not being part of the European Union, So I don't think also because a different economic relation that this will be imitated by other countries, not even the Visegrad group or the East European groups, First of all, because if you think the Polish growth or, and then when you make a demoscopic analysis about Europe is very strange, because if you ask also to Hungarians or to Polish, do you like Europe? They say no. Bureaucracy or this decision, they say no. But then the last question, do you want that your country gets out of Europe? 80% say no, because this idea of necessity of Europe is becoming more and more clear, And I think that there is a necessity. When I talk with the students, I always take a chapter of Italian history. Let's say in the Renaissance, the Italian states, they were really, I am not nationalistic, they were dominating Rome, Florence, Genoa, Naples, Milan, Venice. They were leading in art, science, war, and so on and so on. Then we had the first globalization, the discovery of America. We didn't stick together, and Italy disappeared from the world map for 4 centuries because no one was able to build the new caravels, the new ships that were necessary to go. If you visit the arsenal in Venice, you understand immediately the strategic mistake, because it's so narrow, you cannot do that. Europe, and is in the same situation now, in the same situation. France, Germany, Italy, they will never be able to run, to manage the second and definitely globalization. And which are the new caravels? Clearly Google, Apple, Alibaba, Amazon, eBay, all Chinese and Americans. There is no one European. The only case of European success, that was success, is Airbus. That's then, in all the new technology, new ways in which, and the accumulation of wealth going outside Europe is incredible. If you think that the European Commission was proud to have given, to oblige Apple to pay $13 billion or euros, I don't even euro, to Ireland for non-pay taxation. I don't, there was some sort of European pride,
The Irish don't collect.
The Irish denied to take it, But second, the lawyers, they started, I think they will never pay it. But third, I am an economist. I went to see the balance sheet of Apple. Proud for 13 billion. They have 258 billion cash outside the United States. So what about? They are the big caravels, if you think how Amazon is completely changing trades inside and outside the United States, is incredible. Incredible. Then we could talk about that because I think that also inside the United States will be an enormous difference. But if we don't understand history, then and step by step, this necessary of history is coming out slowly, Second observation, what is happening now after Brexit? After Brexit, of course, people was in favor of Europe in France, in Holland, unexpectedly. And now, you have also the German elections, My opinion about Germany is totally different from what has been the common comment, because I do think that this is only because Germany now is a normal European country. Let's say in all European countries we had anti-European groups and populistic parties. And the traditional parties were in disarray everywhere, except in Germany. And it's the only country in which you have young boys going into socialist young group or Christian Democratic, and then a career like 30 years ago in all European countries. But you have not the same thing in France, nothing in Italy, nothing in Spain. So the last election, they simply thought Germany is very similar to other European countries. So I was not absolutely frightened by this change, And this now, the traditional parties are still stronger in Germany than in France or Italy or Spain in quantitative terms. So and there is a total new possibility. Let's say Macron, he was elected on a pro-European platform. He repeated this platform on the Sorbonne. I don't know whether he could be coherent or not, but because I don't want to go into the detail. But there is a great occasion that is convenient for France and for Germany. They say the revival of the idea of the European army. France has been weakened in the last 10 years in an incredible way. Now, and we go to Brexit, is the only country with a veto right in the United Nations and is the only country with a nuclear weapon. And so, if Macron say, look, of course we keep the veto right, we keep it's French, but we organize it in order to coordinate with the European countries. We take the leadership of a necessary European defense, common defense. This is convenient for Germany because they start a rearmament without making any harm to anybody, because it's European, and it's convenient for France and for Europe in rebalancing the European case. Of course, why this is the new fact, and I am a little paradoxical, but this is possible because there is not the easy attitude of Europeans vis-à-vis United States that say the new presidency that is clearly injecting malaise or uncertainty is provocating a more popular idea of a common European defense. So the most pro-European leader in the world now is Trump. And so he will promote European Union, and there are many, politics is a very strange place, I am a little exaggerating, a little joking, but this is clearly there is a change. It will be possible to implement it. There are still many uncertainties because in Germany we have not yet a government, but while there are different opinions on in economic matter and the coalition, I think that in this, let's say, long-term idea to have a common defense side by side with the monetary union, it's becoming more and more, let's say, popular, So, and I don't want my story too long. We are slowly implementing the two pillars of the Westphalian Congress here that say that to have a modern state, you need to have an army and a currency. The two pillars of the state are the army and the currency. And so with the slowness that is a consequence of a political process that is done not by weapons, but by, let's say, peaceful change, I think that this could be an important step for the future. I stop it.
Great, terrific. Well, thank you. Maybe I'll just start the conversation. And from what you seem to say here, I grasp a glimmer of hope that Europe might somehow come together in ways that it hasn't come so far. I'll be honest with you, I was a little bit surprised. After Brexit, I would have expected a stronger reaction from the EU in terms of coming together. And the question I have for you is, now that the German and the French election are behind us, do we have the leadership that is necessary to find this coming together? The Macron Sorbonne speech was obviously full of enthusiasm and hope and refounding of Europe in many ways, stop the civil wars. I mean, he's used some very encouraging words. Is he the leader to take Europe forward? To now that Merkel, which has provided stability throughout, the time, is maybe slightly weakened. Although we have to see what happens from a government perspective. I mean, how do you see that? In Italy, of course, I don't want to get into Italy in detail, but Italy has elections coming, and we all know that they could become the next element of instability in terms of political cohesion of the union. And I won't even go into Spain and what's happening at the moment. But do you want to?
Then we go to Spain.
We'll get there, right? So you want to address that from a leadership perspective. You've lived through Europe with leaders that took Europe, to the next step for reasons that were the historical reasons. Where are we?
Well, first of all, I think that they are the best leader that we had in the market. And the only leadership that could do what I told in the beginning, and think of a different results of the elections.
Right.
They will do it not easy because, when you go to the details of the problem, there are a lot of question marks. We don't even know which will be the German economic policy. I skipped it because it's completely maybe different from even if I do think honestly that nobody could be more German than Schäuble. They say if the liberal take the Minister of the Economy, they will be. No, I don't think that there will be a major change, But this is still a question mark because we don't know which will be. Because it's a strange fact that in Germany you have fantastic stability with a almost proportional electoral law. Because of what I told you before, the traditional party were resisting. Now you have a big contradiction in Germany. You have a split of the parties and an electoral law unable to put them together. In some way, Germany must tackle this contradiction because if we should have the German law, electoral law in France, France should be in a messy situation. It's incredible. So it's the strength of Germany till now, maybe in my opinion, a weakness in the future. But for the moment, I think that there is a common interest shared between France and Germany to make progress in some deep political chapter, and the necessity for Europe to recuperate some, not only defense policy but some foreign policy is urgent because till now we had in the last years we did many mistakes, not looking at European future strategy. Now we are squeezed in the Middle East, out of Middle East, squeezed with the tension with Russia, divided. I do think that it's urgent to recuperate that. And if there is a Franco-German agreement, we could do much better in the future.
May I come to an aspect which you touched upon in talking about the Sorbonne speech by President Macron, where he listed a number of topics which would be crucial going forward. And
hundreds of topics.
I wanted to be polite. I will be even more polite in a second. So, and one was about fiscal capacity. That was also addressed in Juncker's State of the Union speech in the European Parliament. And now I'm really polite, incredibly polite. I turned a fan of you in 2002 when you gave an interview to Le Monde. you might not like to hear that, but you said the Stability and Growth Pact is stupido.
It's stupid, yes.
And
I had a lot of trouble because of that.
And you gave the right reasons for that. It was about how economists would think about rules versus discretion. And you said if you implement stuff rigorously without regard for the environment you're in, it doesn't work. So now we have even more rules. Ever since the crisis, we've doubled down on those rules. And the probability, and then I stop, the probability of getting a fiscal capacity at the EU level has gone with the German election. Because the new government will cater to a sentiment which is in no way prepared to accept anything that's really one of the worst notions you could use in the German debate of a transfer union. So how do we get out of this?
No, you're totally right, and I was, I think, intellectually honest, telling that the economy is very difficult to get out of the problems, and only if you have a new political, let's say, drive that gives people the idea that we can better off if we stay together, you can overcome the economic problem, because, I am not repentant to have told that the Stability Pact is stupid, because in the first... I used to. In the first year of my economic studies, it was clear that you must have surplus budget in some case, deficit budget in some other, Keynes, now has been blamed, but I think that he's still a good economist, and to put arithmetic rule on the budget discipline, I think really is wrong. But you already told in your question, you need a political strength to overcome this. Why you put arithmetic rules? Because you have not a political cohesion to say, look, politics will decide the right decision in this moment, and I clearly was convinced that the crisis would have brought wisdom in the decision-making process, and this I was wrong. I was wrong because the split was too deep, but unless we do that, we are really out of any world decision. I made the example I did before because I am absolutely convinced that we have no role in the world if we go on in this situation. The definition of Europe, that is an economic giant, because we are still the biggest industrial country in the world, an economic giant, a political dwarf, and a military worm. Look, it's true. And you have to take note and overcome that, starting from the worm. From the worm is possible to give a political strength to the economy in this moment is difficult, But the problem is the German virtue. I always repeat that Germany is strong because it's virtue, but the virtue is a disaster. Because I never asked to Germany to pay for Italy, Spain, or France, but to, let's say, to be coherent in the policy, because having a surplus in a trade that is bigger than the surplus, not trade, surplus in trade, that is bigger than Portuguese GDP, almost as big as the Belgian GDP, is completely inconsistent with even with German interests. So what I was asking is, look, Schäuble was really adopting a doctrine because it was popular, and he's popular in Germany, you know. And I repeat, I don't want to, let's say, to move wealth from Germany to other European countries, but to have a policy. You know, we blame it. I wrote articles against the Chinese surplus, but the German surplus now is 8% of German GDP. 8% of German GDP. Chinese surplus is 2% of Chinese GDP. So, look, why I have to blame China and not to blame Germany? Honestly.
What should they do?
Spend more?
Devalue the currency?
No, spend more. Public works, increasing wages, salaries. You have many.
Who decides on wages?
Germans.
The Chancellor?
Well, yes, the Chancellor, the trade unions, and
The trade unions
yes, but the trade union, if you
are responsible.
yes, but if you tell to the trade union to increase wages with a deliberate policy, they will agree, of course, you know. And we are in an absurd situation in which we are unable to put the inflation to the target. You know, we have deflation. We have tension in Europe, and you know, the German investment that are they could balance, let's say, all, you know, all the, and clearly it is a problem that if we don't harmonize this in the long run, will be, if we don't set the rules for a common economic policy, in the long run we cannot resist.
May I make 2 points?
Yes.
If you would suggest any German politician to go against the current account surplus, trying to reduce the current surplus, she would immediately lose. That's why the candidate for chancellorship of Social Democrats, first remark he made was, we would like to keep up being world champion in exports.
It's a doctrine.
So the second remark has to do with this idea that anything is always a supply side issue. So there's no lack of demand, no room for increasing demand in Germany. And that has, of course, been a philosophy which has been defended for a very long time by the Commission also. So do we have to think about how to reorganize public sector or debates in the public sphere?
No, but, you know, I don't want to teach to the German politician what to do. Certainly, I was simply, let's say, telling that this imbalance makes the possibility of a common interest much more difficult. You know, I know that the internal political problems are dominating in all the European countries. It's not only Germany, but Germany is the leader country. You know, it's nobody wanted to give money to Greece after the tragedy, and you know, I don't want to absolve the Greece because they cheated. Simply, they cheated. You know, and but the German decision not to do it before the North Rhine-Westphalian election, that any European country should have taken the same decision, you know, because the electorate, the electoral interest is primary, you know. But this changed the burden of the Greek crisis from 30 billion to 300 billion euros, simply like that. If you are leader, you have to show the leadership in doing the proper policy, But I repeat, I don't blame Germany. I simply tell that if we have not a common policy, this mistake will be repeated and could be repeated by France or Italy if they could have the leadership, simply like that. This is what I think, but this is a serious problem because the Greek case could be repeated, could be another country, could be Italy, could be France, could be Spain, could be, and this is a problem. But clearly, we touch the great problem
on that front
of democracy, because it's we all shorten more and more our horizon because of election. For the young students that are here, I do remember a meeting, a debate with the Chinese, with the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Chinese Communist Party, not the Chinese Minister of Foreign Affairs, And he was looking, telling how can you, European or Americans, can run a country that you have always elections, municipal, regional, national, European, or in American case, the by-election that are 1 year long and so, or more than 1 year long. So my answer will look, we like it.
Good question.
Good question, But then it became the interesting part of the conversation. So look, it's true, maybe we shall have election, I doubt, but anyway, this was the answer. But with the new demoscopic analysis, even the smallest election becomes initial elections, So if you have an election for the mayor of Rome or Le Mans, this is a major election. And so you were always under campaign. And the problem of democracy are long-term problem, education, health, reform. And if you think only to the 2 months that you have before the election is a total tragedy. But this is a problem of our democracy. And Europe is in the same situation, We think to our election, not only Germans, Italians too, it's even more. But if we do that with the different political cycles, we never solve the problem.
Can we talk about that a little bit more before we open it up? Just one question, because I want to go back to Italy in a way, because financial markets seem to have put behind them since the German and the French and the German elections. The Europe has been on a tear. The people seem to believe that populism has essentially been defeated and that Europe will find a new stability and potential growth. But unfortunately, the reality is much more complicated than that. And I don't think the financial markets, for one, have fully baked in what could happen if Italy doesn't find the political stability that people would like to see. And it's still a country with the largest public debt out there, which at a time where interest rates have been at the zero lower bound, nobody really talked about. But in a moment where potentially that goes away, that would become a topic again, just financially. Could you give us your views on Italy? What's going to happen there? How you see things potentially evolving, given that the demoscopic results seem to be, for the moment, very unsure. They don't indicate a clear direction.
Look, as always, Italy is per se a contradiction, because if you look at our trade balance is positive.
Yes.
Italy is the second industrial country in Europe.
Sure is.
Added value of Italian manufacturing is higher than the French one, But we have a very strange economy. We have no one big company, no one Italian big company. After Fiat went American, it's and the French have 12, and so on, and our very small company that were our pride are, because of the crisis, have been very disastrous, and we have 2,500 companies that are fantastic. Nobody knows why, but anyway, we arrived to a level of complexity and we don't go beyond. But this medium-sized company, for the American standard, they could be even called a small company. But anyway, let's say from 50 million euros sale to 2 billion euro sales. They are very profitable, very effective, and so in theory, provided that we don't talk about the split between South and North and so on and so on, but we are very well placed. But we have this terrible problem of debt. Look, today the debt has no importance because with the inexistent rate of interest, but we have this pending stone, and the international finance is always happy to find a ship to eat, and it's Italy. But honestly, it's also debatable whether the debt is so important, with such an enormous financial market and so on and so on. In my opinion, look, and I am not for that because I am the only Italian leader who have strongly diminished the debt GDP ratio. So I even put a tax called taxation for Europe. So I am, but even as an economist, I think that the problem of that has been overrated. And you have countries like Japan, maybe because they have more internal debt, but Italy also a majority of internal debt, So, but the financial market values are like that, and we have to respect them. Clearly, my answer is, look, this is a danger we have. I cannot deny it. I can tell you simply, on the next 2 or 3 years, I don't think that the rate of interest will change. We could have an increase in spread, but the quantity of currency, of money existing in the world is so high that in some way we could manage. We may have a little higher spread, but 1 point more. This is my horizon, but certainly I do understand that we have to fix it. And it's possible only, to fix it is possible only with growth and a bit of inflation.
So can you get the Germans to give us some inflation, please? A little bit of inflation, would you?
If you make a mathematical simple calculation, it's with 2% inflation, that is correct, and 3% growth.
You're actually right.
You fix up the debt in very few years.
Ken Rogov and Carmen Ryder showed that all those over-indebtedness, most of it has been solved by inflation, 70% actually.
Yeah, in fact, you cannot have inflation now.
Also in Germany, by the way.
Yeah.
And the US, for that matter. Yeah. But, all right, should we open it up to questions from the audience?
Too many questions.
Lots of hands in the air. You choose.
Let's have 3 questions. So if I'm unable to answer to one, I mix them.
Dante, do you?
Dante, you have. Oh,
Do you want me to choose?
you are the manager.
Right. So let's start there in the middle. So Roberto.
Thank you, Professor Prodi, for being here. I'm Roberto from Harvard Business School.
Speak slow, clear, because I'm very, very old.
So thank you, Professor Prodi, for being here. My name is Roberto from the Harvard Business School. I'm a student of Dante Ricci, by the way. Just want to, as a disclaimer. I wanted to briefly.
You are unfortunate.
You didn't force us to be here, by the way. We are here on our own desire. I wanted to briefly touch on the Catalan imbroglio, and the question is the following. Some people see in this an additional element of instability in Europe, and potentially a reason why Europe actually, as a union, could actually be diminished and damaged by it. But on the other hand, this could also be a good opportunity for the European Union to step in as a mediator and to in some sense, create a new setup where regionalism can have a role in the context of a federal, in the concept of a federal Europe. And so the question for you would be, what's your position on this? Do you see this as an opportunity or merely as a threat? And also, what would the reaction from the other governments be, knowing that most European countries today have to deal with some sort of regionalism, whether it's Europe, whether it's Italy with a referendum in Lombardy next month, whether it's the Flanders, whether it's France with Corsica, and also obviously the Basque in Spain. So I wanted to see what your position would be.
Do you want more questions? What, do you want to take this one?
Three questions, because if I am unable to answer it.
Hi, I'm Josh Freeman. I live in the general area. But how about a European constitution?
Okay.
Professor.
My friend, Romano, you mentioned the problem of defense. Now, as you know, the technology of nuclear weapons has changed, and there is no way that I see that we can discuss this with European experts somewhat. There is lack of communication. We could communicate more sometime with the Russians on these issues. Let me give you an example. The agreement with Iran, it was made mostly by a friend of mine at MIT. The Europeans then endorsed it, but they did not participate. So again, how do you see that Europe can be brought in the global problem of nuclear weapons? Remember, the technology is changing. The number of weapons is decreasing, but the accuracy is going up. So there are new dangers there.
Okay. Regionalism. You probably think that I am mad, but I think these regional fightings, they grow and increase only because of Europe. Because if you take there is always, if it rains, there is always the European umbrella. And so you can rise all the problem because convenient for your region, simply because if you lose, nothing happens. You minimize. You have a zero loss game. In Barcelona, in the case of there is a different language and history and so on, but in all other cases, mainly you have an economic issue. You know, if you have an income that is higher than the average of your nation, you want to be independent. You know, and it's quite interesting that if you follow the Scottish case, you know, when the price of oil decreased, the independence decreased. You know, and is correlated to the price of oil, let's say, the possibility of and the quality of oil. I'm, of course, a bit joking, but I really tell you that because of the security given, the guarantee given by Europe, this, let's say, regional independence role will increase. And this is worrying because they are destabilizing. Also because we have not yet precise rules. You know, for example, I have seen in these days there is a discussion for the Spanish case. You know, in which I do think that the mistakes on both sides have been incredible. You know, from one side, let's make the referendum as a joke, you know, as something only without consequence. For the other side, to control it with violence, you know. But we have also the problem of the Europe has not told anything. And this is very, very serious, because we didn't put the rules in this case. I found my declaration that was in 2002, 2003, and I think is still true, that if you become independent, you are not anymore member of the European Union. And to enter, you need the unanimity, as are the existing rules are that if you declare that you call you, let's say, X country, then you have to apply. And to be accepted, you need unanimity. So for Catalonia, it's a very serious problem, because from the legal point of view, but clearly if you tackle this only from the legal point of view, you will never have a solution of the problem. So the only way out is a dialogue, is try to have a dialogue, and from this some sort of doctrine or tradition or let's say regional let's say autonomy is important. There are many experience, many countries, starting from Italy, in which you have the so-called special regions, in which there is a lot of independent set of decisions. So I do think that you have to tackle the problem, to try to have a mediation on the Spanish case, because both Madrid and Barcelona are in trouble, but both, not only one, and to find
Gotta love it. Gotta love it. Appropriate.
I think that I could that better. But this is coherent. I cancel it. Yes, I can go on. I didn't do my purpose. No, and it's. So I think that we must find, even in this case, some innovative proposal, because this is the rule, but we have to overcome the impasse in which we are. And I do think that because of the damage, some sort of, let's say, mediation and agreement is possible now, because it's the problem is to get out of the problem, because all Spain will be damaged, and the local independence will cost a lot in terms of identity, economic, because the split also inside the region is always damaging, And the other case, the dominant aspect is the monetary, the economic one, and this is much easier to mediate, to find some sort of mediation, But clearly we cannot have a European Council shaped by 100 or 200 regions, because otherwise it's the concept of nation must be kept. This is what I think, it is the foundation of the let's say of the mediation we have now. European Constitution, we did it, and was vetoed by the French vote, And because of this is the problem, that all the referendums, they don't give an answer to the question of the referendum. It's a terrible fact, the European Constitution was fired because there was anti-Chirac mood in France at that moment, and there was no
Pension
other.
reform. Pension reform.
No,
Pension reform.
no, the constitutional reform, I mean, in the 2005.
Yes, Juppé, pension reform.
Ah, yeah. There was a social.
answering-
The subject was pension, and if you think that, I do remember so well because we worked years for the mediation of the constitution, and we were convinced of an approval because the mediation was. But as you told, the fighting for pensions in France. And the campaign was all under the so-called Polish plumber. And there was no one Polish plumber in all France, no one, statistically speaking, But, this idea of, and I think that for a long period of time will be impossible to keep the constitution, no way, I think. On the problem of technology, it is a general problem of Europe, the cooperation. The same thing could be repeated on terrorism, on migration. Only if we have a common policy, we can get out, of that problem. Because if you take space, for example, it's incredible that. When there was the Balkans war, I perceived that the GPS system has been suspended and slowed down for a while, So, and for good reasons, because there was a war. So when I became president of the European Commission, I immediately proposed to have a European system called Galileo. The British government said, no, it costs too much, and so on, so on, so on. So I had an agreement, I tried to have an agreement with Russia and China to have a general system, and then they were paying, and we were giving the technical skill. Impossible because of military reasons. The result is that there is China's 30 satellites. We have 4 working and 8 that are going around, not yet working, but they will work in the future. We have not yet, after 14 years, any system out of all the technology that is linked to that, and another disaster. And we had absolutely the skill to do it, but not the political will. The caravel.
All right, some more questions.
Last 3.
More. Start with Andrew.
No, a lady.
Sorry. Behind Angelo. That's you.
Me?
Yes.
Okay. So thanks. Thanks a lot for this presentation. I'm Sabrina Aragone, and I work at the Max Planck Institute for Comparative Public Law.
Yes, but if you cannot louder, I cannot answer.
I'm Sabrina Aragone, and I work in Germany, in Heidelberg, at the Max Planck Institute. I have a broader political question, which is that I wanted to know whether you think that the problems of the European Union now depend also on the matter of political discourse by some political parties, because some of them depict Europe as a problem or as like the origin of all bad things that happen within the country, and in some other cases, even when the EU is depicted in a positive way, is depicted more as a necessity than something like, I don't know, a project, an ideological and social project. So the EU started as a project pursuing something specific that was peace, and I wanted to know whether you think that we can give a new impulse to the European project through some change in the political discourse or not. Thanks.
Okay.
So, you mean you mean that we should need some basic issue to stick together like peace? Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Where do we go? To the back there, the gentleman with the glasses. Yeah.
Thanks so far. You talked about the European defense policy, and coming from Finland, I can easily see the popular support for such a thing back home. However, what do you think the support for the common European defense policy would be in countries such as France and Germany among voters? And also, what would such a defense policy include?
Okay. Let's take a third, Charlie.
You're an optimistic man, but in a long career, this is a historical question, during this career, what was the most discouraging experience, a moment that you had?
Such a long list.
Worse than optimistic.
Okay. No, really, you pointed the right point. The problem is that this is why I was joking, telling that Trump is, because, which was the real strength of Europe? Peace. When I go to make sermons, now I am like a friar or a priest going around to young people. When I talk about peace to young guys, they look me as a dinosaur, No, but really, peace. Peace is for granted. And I have to explain that few kilometers out of Europe in the Yugoslavian country, blah, 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 blah. But now it's the real problem that you need a strong sentiment to have a political change. And economy is not enough. Also because, a wealthy country can grow only. You can have economy. You had economy in Italy when it was poor. You had economy in China to transform the country, but from 2 to 3% growth, in sentiment for voting, yes, but to make a change in policies is not easy. And so this is the real problem, and this is why the idea of what I told you before about telling people, look, we shall be completely out of the future world. And this is what I am insisting, telling, look, and I do think that US and China, they should need a strong Europe as, in some way, mediator or balancing the situation, and I am insisting in order to, because of your reason, to give a strong ideological idea to the necessity of unity. And the strong idea is half peace and half, let's say, the existence, the possibility of having a future. Defense policy among voters has become a little more popular in the last, because this is the reason why I think that could be done. In this moment, nobody will raise the harm, telling, look, this is a stupid old idea. Also, first of all, because the American president correctly told you don't spend anything on defense and so on and so on. But in the meantime, it's given insecurity to the situation. It's so for different reasons, the idea of an army is coming a little more popular. I don't say popular, but a little more popular than before. Different reasons, because somebody thinks that we must have a policy vis-a-vis Middle East, probably some other Russia. The reasons are different, but the idea of being stronger in the army is a little more popular now. if there is a political drive, could be accepted. The last one, I don't remember the last
But
one.
the most discouraging moment.
The modern school. Well, I forgot for Freudian reasons. You know. No, look, I had many moments of discouragement. You know, it's clearly the most important. When I entered into Italian politics, I had a clear idea of, it was a long-term political idea of bringing the country in the normal division between reformers and conservative. That is absolutely normal. And I tried to put together all the reformers that were split because of the Cold War. You know, my definition of Italy was it's the only country divided inside by the Berlin Wall. You know, the Berlin Wall divided two countries that were united. In Italy, the political split between communist and non-communist was inside. So my idea was, and it worked. You know, when I understood that because of let's say different political ideas and interests went in disarray, of course it was the worst moment of all my political life, because the design, that was a long-term idea, it was impossible to do. This was a real long-term moment. Then to recall the moment of defeats, but they were short-term. This is long-term, because it's still my problem. You know, how to help a country to have a long-term destiny, you know, a long-term driving force. You know, it's. I told them, then I end my conversation because otherwise you will kill me. Well, and this could be also an answer to your question. The first election I won, I went in my first visit to the German Chancellor, Helmut Kohl, you know. And we had a very good meeting, you know, because we found ourselves with a good chemistry and friendship rised. He came also to campaign for me, even if we were in a different party, you know. He was like my old parroco, you know, it was like that, you know. And then after 2 hours of discussion, he accompanied me. The chancellor was still in Bonn, you know, through the garden to the helicopter. And he told me, look, Romano, it was a very nice conversation with 2 hours spent very well. Who will come next time? This was, you asked me, I have to be honest, you know, in this one. I won the election, great idea, it went well, and who will come next time? So, buonasera a tutti.